You're watching the VetTunes podcast, the show that shines a spotlight on military and veteran artists. Stand by for transmission. All right, transmission indeed. We are transmitting to you from the Jump CP at Harmony Hill. We're usually in the bunker down at the studio, but today we're up in the Jump CP, and we are talking to Jason Jackson. And I was telling him a little bit earlier that he is one of the inspirations behind this show, in that we want to highlight military and veteran artists. I had the opportunity to meet Jason back in Belle Chasse, Louisiana, which is just outside of New Orleans, and he and I were both on active duty at the time. And now he is a professional touring jazz artist and recording artist, and exactly the type of folks that we want to talk to and let people know that there's some really talented folks out there who happen to, by the way, be veterans, which is really cool. So Jason, welcome. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So you had recently just played the Norfolk Jazz Festival, and I see you're doing jazz festivals all over the world. I've seen you on jazz cruises and things like that. I mean, you are out there. I love seeing you pop up in the social media feed, and I love hearing the music. But before we get to all that, tell us a little bit about your journey to the military and your journey to music. And with you being a former Navy musician, I mean, perhaps they were simultaneous. I just, tell us your journey.
Yeah, so music's always been a part of my life. So I did the same track that pretty much everybody does in middle school. Start playing an instrument, kind of goes through to high school, and then, when you get to the end of high school, you got to decide what you want to do. If you want to go to college, what you want to go to college for. So I ended up going to the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, which is where I grew up, in Wilmington, North Carolina, for saxophone performance. So I played sax all through college, graduated in 2005, and then had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life after college, right? I was so burnt out from, all the music classes and working a full-time job at the same time, that when I graduated, I was just happy to just get a job and play on the weekends, which is what I did for a long time. I worked at Walmart for a long time. I worked at Target in management for a long time, and I just played on the weekends for, years and years. And that retail job that I had eventually led me to getting offered a job in New Orleans at this retail store they had on base. It was called the Navy Exchange. It was the strangest thing to me that they had a retail store on a military base. Like I couldn't I couldn't fathom that in my head. But I ended up getting
that was the one in Belle Chasse?
Right. Yep, the one in Belle Chasse.
Wow. So
I ended up getting a job in retail management at that store. And I moved down there. My wife wasn't even down there. I moved down there by myself. And, she kind of packed the house up and all that and got ready to come down. But right across from my office, like, I could look out the window and I could see this Navy Band New Orleans was there. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Like, I'd like to check that out. And one day I just kind of on my lunch break just wandered over there and kind of peeked in the door, and somebody opened the door and said, hey, what's going on? And they gave me a tour of the building and started talking to me about the program a little bit. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds pretty cool. I think I'd like to maybe audition it. And they gave me, the requirements, and I took it home, and just so happened that, all the possessions I had with me at the time were just what I could fit in my car and drive down there. And I just so happened to have my horn in the car. Nice. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go back to the Navy Lodge here and work this audition requirements up. And I spent about a week and worked it up and called them back and said, hey, I'm ready when you guys are. And we had an audition, and they called me later that day and were like, yeah, you're in if you want to go see a recruiter. And it was kind of happened from there. I ended up leaving that job at the Exchange and joining the Navy as a musician before my wife even moved down there to meet me. So she wasn't exactly thrilled about what I was putting her through. But my whole plan was, I'm going to get in the Navy Band and I'll come right back here to New Orleans, no problem. I had no idea how much of a long shot that actually was. I don't think I'd take that risk again if knowing what I know now about how it all works. But I was like, oh, sure, it'll be no problem. But, the stars aligned, and that's actually what ended up happening. I went to basic, I went to A school, came right back to New Orleans. My wife stayed in the same house the whole time, and it was just couldn't have worked out better. So it had to be meant to be.
Great.
Yeah.
So was that your only duty station down there?
So I did 3 years in New Orleans, and then they closed that band.
Right.
Then they sent me to Japan from there, and I did 4 years there. And then I came back to Norfolk, which is where I finished and did 3. So I did 10
over in
total.
Japan, I remember seeing you over there. Was that Iwakuni or Okinawa?
Yokosuka.
Oh, Yokosuka.
Yeah.
I just completely missed that.
Yeah.
So when you're over there in the Navy band, where are you playing?
So the biggest part of our job there is we're there to support the admiral, the commander of the 7th Fleet. Wherever he goes is where we go. So if he gets on the Blue Ridge and goes to Indonesia or China or wherever, we're there just on the boat with him in case he wants to put on, dinners or parties for heads of state or whatever his mission is down there. We're there to support what he's trying to do. But then in the meantime, when they're not having these get-togethers and things, they send us out and we'll do schools and orphanages and public concerts and that kind of thing. And then, when we're not on the ship, we're doing a lot of embassy things, going to different embassies and playing functions there. Overseas like that is not as much recruiting, but stateside things, it's a lot of recruiting tours and those kind of things as well.
Sure.
But overseas there was mostly just to be on 7th Fleet staff and in support with what their mission is.
Yeah. I remember it was early in my career, and we did a float. We did a 6-month workup, 6-month deployment to all the places in South America and over in West Africa. Mm-hmm. And I remember, as an infantry guy, we're always, we get to the port, we get off, we go train, we come back just dirty, nasty, and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, the ship, while we were out in the field for a couple days, the ship is now all spick and span, and there's a band out there, and they're having all these dignitaries, and they set up like bars and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I was just like, wait, what's happening? And then, I see the Navy band, and as I was always a musician and interested in music, and then just watch those guys just absolutely crush. I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. So I can imagine some of the opportunities you had to go over there and do some shows had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great. And one of the cool things about it was you have to play so many different styles of music to have that job. So you could be playing, in like a wind ensemble kind of classical music thing. Then you go right to playing military marches, right into playing like in the top 40 kind of thing. So
sure.
It really kept you sharp on all the different styles and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that just kind of blew me away is, we've been out in the ocean and we're going and we're hitting these ports, and then all of a sudden this band shows up and there's all this gear and PA, and we're like, wait, what? What's happening? Yeah. Like, how does that work? Is the logistics have to be pretty crazy? Yeah,
that's the worst part of the gig is wherever we go, we bring everything, right? So our own PA, entire, we'll bring 5,000 pounds of gear with us. And if we're just traveling with like a little rock band, there's maybe 5 to 7 of us, and we're all schlepping all that gear, ourselves up and down the ship's passageways and all that kind of stuff. And even when we fly commercial, we bring all that. So imagine checking all that stuff in at the Delta counter. It was insane. I remember on my government travel card having to put like $5,000 in excess baggage fees. So I was a little nervous. I was like, this is attached to my credit, right? Don't swipe this if you guys aren't going to approve my request to get refunded here.
So you guys just palletize all that stuff?
Yeah, flying Mill-Air was a lot easier, right? Because we could just belly load everything ourselves. But yeah, when I remember we were each responsible for like 4 or 5 of these little airport carts worth of gear, running it back and forth from the curb to the check-in counter. And then when we were in, some more crazy airports, like if we were in, I want to say, we were in like Jakarta, the airport there, and it's just insane. All these people, and we're trying to keep up with all the gear. That was the most stressful part of the job for sure. Once we got there and played music, it was great, but getting everything there was part of the problem.
Okay, so regardless if you're a civilian musician or you're a military musician, you're humping gear.
Right. Yeah.
This is part of the deal. And
now it's a little easier because now, the festivals and the clubs and stuff that I play at now, I'm responsible for what I carry, which is good. So I carry a lot for a sax player, but it's nothing compared to, what all I was responsible for back then.
So when I had run into you down in Belle Chase, we went to the band hall, and you had some recording. Well, the Navy band had some recording gear, and we were in there messing around with that. And you seemed super savvy with all of that stuff. And then, to watch you then go to Japan and then get out and then turn a professional, and then listening to your stuff, it wasn't a far stretch to see how you got there. What's your recording process like? I mean, what was it like early on, and what's it like now when you're doing your solo albums?
Yeah, so I've always been a Pro Tools guy. I remember when I was living in Wilmington, I wanted to get my first little Pro Tools set up, and I was I went to Best Buy. I was looking for a computer, and I asked a friend of mine to come. You might know him. He was originally from Wilmington, Vince Beard, trumpet player. I don't know if you ever met him, but so I asked him to come because he was really smart with computers and everything. And I'm over there looking at the fairly expensive kind of PCs, right? And he walks over to the Macs, and he's like, "You gotta just don't even worry about that. Come over here." And I was like, I wasn't trying to spend that kind of money. But he said, no, this is what you got to get. And so I got like this big iMac, at the time it was just a monstrosity. And so I got that, and I got a little Pro Tools Mbox 2 was what it was, a little interface. And back then, you had to have a specific interface for Pro Tools to work, and it had to be connected to it. So it wouldn't work without the interface. So I got the Mbox, and I got the Mac, and I got, a little condenser mic, kind of beginner condenser mic. And then I just sat down on YouTube and just figured out how the buses worked, how to put reverb and delay, and how to kind of mix a little bit, and the different ways to record, and the different techniques, like where do I want the mic, all that kind of stuff. And I messed with that for a few years, and then eventually upgraded a piece of gear at a time. And by the time I think I met you out in Belle Chase, I had the same kind of setup with maybe a different interface and a different microphone. But then when I started actually making records to like pitch to radio and everything, was when I kind of upgraded. I really went in on got a good preamp, got a good Neve preamp. And I just now got an Upton 251, so it's a Telefunken 251 style mic. So that's kind of my newest upgrade that I just got. But after every record, I try to make a point to upgrade one piece of gear. Yeah.
So you do a lot of it from home. You do some studio work, or both, a little mixture.
So I do it all right here. It's all from home, and I've got a great producer, and we just kind of send wave files back and forth. And he does all the mixing and everything. He uses Logic in his studio in LA. But I record all my stuff in Pro Tools and just send them wave files. And then we send it off separately to get mastered. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Great sound. I was listening to your album on Apple. Just an amazing, incredibly accomplished jazz musician. How would you classify your music?
I always refer to it as more of like instrumental pop. Because I always try to think, like, when I'm trying to write things, like, I want it to be pop music, basically. That's the kind of music I like. I grew up on R&B and the more contemporary smooth jazz type stuff, but definitely R&B based, always R&B, pop, rock based. So that's just a term that I've always kind of been fond of. It's just instrumental pop, I think, is the best. Yeah.
I think it's easy to draw the comparisons to jazz, mainly because it's a saxophone as the lead instrument, and there's a lot of in a newer jazz, you got a lot of funk, you got a lot of pop, and that's definitely your wheelhouse.
Yeah, for sure.
And your primary instrument is?
So I play probably 95% alto sax, then a little bit of soprano, and every now and then, if I have to, I'll play tenor. So that's kind of my third horn, but I'm trying to play a little more of it just for the variety and everything. Right. But yeah, 95% of the time you'll see me on an alto.
Yeah. No, it's always interesting talking to saxophone players because they're either diehard alto or diehard tenor, and I've met a little bit of both. We probably have some common friends. Did you know Stephen Thorne down in UNCW?
Yep.
So I had played with him for a while. And also Joe Yankel, he was in the Marine band, and then he did some school down there. And Joe is a alto guy, and Steve is a tenor guy, And I love them both. They have different different styles, different flavors. But yeah, I love seeing you out there, because the one thing about that alto, and when you're on stage with a band that's just ripping, you got a great guitar player that you're out there touring with. That alto will just cut right through everything.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've got the most power with alto for sure.
Yeah. So when you're out there and you're playing, like say, you talked about you need to bring your own gear and your saxophone rig. I mean, what's your sax rig rundown?
Yeah, so I've got so my horn goes into I use an AMT microphone, which is, they make a lot. I think they make some drum mics too, but mostly they make clip-on horn microphones.
Okay.
So I've got one of those that runs into a Shure wireless system. I think it's the ULXD system. I had to upgrade just because of all the festivals and things I was playing. There's a lot of RF going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of wireless traffic.
Yeah, so I had to kind of upgrade to the more robust wireless system just so I could find a channel. Just this last weekend playing Norfolk, there was something going on. I had to rescan 2 or 3 times just to find a channel I could use. So I was really happy I had made that upgrade. But so it goes into that Shure wireless system, and then that feeds into, it's actually a guitar rig. It's a Quad Cortex. I don't know if you've heard of that, the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. It's an amp modeler and everything. It does a whole lot of stuff, but I only use it for the verb and delay. But it just goes into that, and then I come out of that stereo. So it's got 2 XLRs on the back of the pedal. So I just send the house a stereo signal out there that they can just hard pan left and right, and then I can have full control of what I want effect wise, depending on what's happening in the show.
Okay, so you're driving the effects versus the sound engineer out front.
Yeah, and the best thing about that for me is, one, I can quickly change based on what tune we're doing or whatever, but also I bring my own in-ear setup too. So I get what I put out. Right. So I don't have to worry about a monitor mix giving me verb, and because I like things pretty wet as far as verb and stuff. Sure. So to not have to rely on somebody running monitors to give me a little verb or a little something, it just comes, it's exactly what I'm sending them is what I get back in my ears. That's been a welcome change for me to start bringing my own ears too. I just kind of recently got into doing in-ears at every show, and that's it took a little getting used to, and it's a little bit more gear to carry around, right? It's just one more thing to carry, but it's worth it once you can get used to it. Just because, man, I don't have a headache anymore after the gig, and my ears aren't ringing, and so that's been a nice change as well. Yeah,
I've actually got my little Shure earbuds in from my wireless system, and it took a lot getting used to, because when you're out there and you're getting just a dry signal, especially as a singer, and you want just a little verb so you can kind of create the space, you're really reliant upon the monitor guy, the sound engineers to give you that mix, or at least make it feel like you're not just in a very small closet with a whole lot of clothes. It's just right. Everything is just right up on you. You get that verb, and it just kind of opens everything up. So that's great that you can control that yourself.
Yeah, that makes a world of difference.
Good stuff. Tell us about some of your early gigs non-Navy. In the Navy, you're out there, you're doing the shows with the Admiral, and you're out there doing the Hearts and Minds stuff out there with the local populace. Mm-hmm. But when you transitioned to performing as a solo artist, I mean, what were some of those gigs like up to now, where you're now doing festivals and some of those big jazz and pop festivals?
Yeah. So it was kind of a strange path, because when I was getting out of the Navy, my end of service was 2021. But I knew, in 2020 that I was getting out. So that's when I kind of started the whole push to, okay, I'd like to make a record. I want to meet some, get with a producer and all these things. And I was able to luckily use kind of COVID to my advantage, because everybody was at home, right? Nobody was out gigging. Musicians were looking for work. So I used that opportunity to kind of figure out who I wanted to produce. Like, if I could get anybody to produce a record for me, who would it be? And I looked and I found the guy that I wanted, and just so happened he had his email address on his Instagram, and I just sent him an email and sent him a demo. And within 10 minutes, he had hit me back and he was like, yeah, I'm listening to your demo now. Call me tomorrow. And I called him and we've been working together ever since. There's a great guitar player by the name of Adam Hawley. But so it being, 2020, 2021-ish, I didn't play live till maybe 2022 when things kind of started to pick back up. So I had already had a record out and had radio play and all these things. So it was kind of weird because I wasn't able to jump into playing live at the same time I started releasing music, just because everything was kind of shut down.
Sure.
So about the time things started picking up, I got a couple of gigs, opening for some other big acts. I was fortunate to have them reach out and say, hey, would you like to do like a little 30-minute opening set for me? So I took advantage and did some of those things. And then when my producer, he tours all over the world. But when he was in the area, he called me and said, hey, would you like to do this gig? And I ended up doing it for him, and he kind of liked the way it turned out. So from then on, he kind of would call me for a little wider area, and then a wider area, and a wider area. So now I'm, touring with him all over the country and all these things, which is good because that kind of gives me, I'm still working while I'm booking my own, my own stuff is starting to kind of pick up. So it's kind of keeps me working while these other things are happening. But it was kind of a strange transition, like I said, just because nothing live was going on. So I kind of had to start that side of the career later.
So you had mentioned earlier radio, like how radio is now a very broad term, just in the form of broadcasted music. But when you talk about radio, you talking like celestial radio, local radio stations, or are you talking like Sirius XM, watercolors kind of thing? And what's it like what did you have to do in order to make that happen?
Yeah, so when we finished my first project, we took the whole record and we sent it to a radio promoter who specialized in smooth jazz. And then we said, hey, can you listen to this and see if there's any singles on here? And he said, yeah, there's a couple of tunes I think will do well on radio. And he picked one, and that was my first single that I released. So we really just left it up to the promoter, like which of these songs, based on all your experience, do you think would be the best debut single? So he picked it, and then then we hired him and he promoted it and all that. But yeah, as far as what you were saying earlier, radio's kind of in three tiers now. So there's like the traditional FM AM radio that they pitch to. Then there's Sirius, which is a big one for smooth jazz because Watercolors is definitely the biggest, has the widest audience for smooth jazz. And then there's all the internet radio stations that kind of go on, like if you look on iHeart, like there's a lot of radio stations that only broadcast over the internet, and they kind of count in that radio format as well.
Sure. Now with that, is it some of the bigger internet radio stations, do they get scooped up by the iHearts, or do they get, what's the word I'm looking, distributed through iHeart radio and the apps and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's any of those, because I know there's iHeart and there's a couple of others, gosh, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but any of those radio apps, like I think a lot of them share the same affiliates or whatever whatever their core network where they're pulling all their music from.
Yeah. So you're talking about the single, getting it out to a radio promoter. What's the single? So that when people listen to this or listen back to it, they can go, oh yeah, Jason Jackson, and then search out that single. What is it?
Yeah, the very first one I released was called All the Way, and it was off of my first project. It was called Moving On. It was an EP that we did, and I was really fortunate because it features this a man named Julian Vaughn, who's a great bass player, like a lead bass player. So he plays piccolo bass, and he kind of plays it in the Wayman Tisdale style. If anybody's familiar with Wayman. But he was, he's a big star in the genre, and he agreed to, feature on this tune with me without it ever having really met me or anything. So he kind of took a risk and did it, but, it just took right off, and it was just a great tune and a great fit for him. And I'm definitely grateful for him to, take that chance and say, yeah, I'll play on it and, associate my name with you, even though I don't really know who you are or anything. So that's another thing that kind of worked out really well.
What I love about hearing all this is, and what I think is important for other artists out there, we've talked to some artists that are brand new. We've talked to, yourself that's been out there doing it professionally. But the common theme that I'm kind of picking up here is, you got to go out and make it happen. You can't just record a song and throw it up on Instagram or TikTok and think that people are going to come knocking down your doors, and you're hitting the emails, you're hitting the phones, you're out there, hitting the road. It's there's a lot to it.
Yeah. A big part of my day every day is email, phone. Like, you're a salesman, really, but the product, you're selling is yourself. So,
right.
You're, and there might be promoters that are interested in having you out to play, but that, maybe they respond to one email you send out of every 10, and it's hard to kind of get your head around it. But even though they are interested in having you, they're just thinking about other things. So don't think that because they're not responding that they're not interested or don't want you out. You just got to keep being persistent. And because, I've always been the type of person that if they don't write back, I'm just like, okay, well, they're not interested. And I don't, I just cut that tie. But I've learned that's not really the case. That's just something that's kind of living in my head. Is they didn't respond, so they're not interested. The more I found is the more persistent you are, and they'll be grateful for it. They'll be like, oh yeah, I meant to get back with you. Let's try this or that, so you got to keep being persistent. Even when you have a relationship with them and you know who they are and you've done shows with them before, you still have to have that same level of persistence or else it'll just kind of evaporate away.
And there's a difference between persistence and just being completely aggressive and...
Yeah, you don't want to burn anything or and if they're not interested, I'm sure you'll be able to pick on that as well. Like if they're really, truly not interested, then, that's a different thing.
When I had gotten out of the Marine Corps and did music full time, I remember the one club, we were based out of the Jacksonville, North Carolina area, and the one club that I really wanted to play was a place called The Attic, which was in downtown Greenville at the time. And it was just one of those places that is just kind of a rite of passage. And I remember getting the opportunity to play there. And then when I went upstairs to the office to get paid, I looked at probably four, and this is a small office, and there was 4 55-gallon trash cans just packed with unopened demos. Now, this is pre-internet. Mm-hmm. But I just kind of, anytime I think of promoters and all that kind of stuff, I think of just those, barrel after barrel after barrel of unopened demos and the amount of stuff that they were getting snail mail. And now you look at the internet and with email and with DMs and all this stuff. I mean, the amount of stuff out there that promoters and radio and clubs get is just astronomical, So I think the key is, just like you were saying, is you got to be persistent, you got to be professional, and then at the end of the day, you got to have the product to back it up, which again, like you said, is yourself.
Right, exactly, yeah, and just so just be ready, like you said, because ticket sales are kind of our big thing, so just be ready to go out there and push those tickets, and don't leave that on the promoter too. Like a lot of people get a gig and they're like, okay, well, the promoter's going to sell all these tickets. And the reality is once you get the gig, then it really starts, because then you have to sell all those tickets, because the promoters, they'll put it up on their socials and maybe they'll put a flyer up, but they're not going to go out and bring people to your show. So, that's when your responsibility kind of really begins. Now I got to sell all these tickets.
That's when you become your own street team.
Right, exactly.
So are you, speaking of teams, are you working with a team, or is it just you in the fighting hole?
It's so I don't have I don't have an agent or self-managed and all of those things. But like I said, I do tour around a lot with other acts who are bigger than me. And they're always really good about, after the show, they'll introduce me to the club owner and say, oh, Jason's an artist, he's got songs on the radio, he's touring as well, and kind of, just give me kind of that warm intro to the promoter or the club owner. And then I kind of come back around and say, oh, hey, I was there last week, I'd love to kind of come do my thing. And so that kind of gives me a nice warm open with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just me doing it, but I have help, you know what I mean? Like from other people in the genre, like bigger artists that are kind of helping me along.
Yeah. If they can do that kind of, warm intro, and then you follow up later on. And again, it's all in the follow up. Hey, great meeting you. Look forward to setting something up, that kind of thing. And versus just beating down the doors going, how come you haven't gotten back? And, we just met and you know.
Right. Yeah. And it helps that, they've seen you and they've heard you, like in the context of you actually doing what you do.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So they know they're not just hiring some random person that, is going to come and, who knows what they're going to do when they get there.
Sure.
So they have a little more, they're a little easier going about it. Yeah.
So when you do shows, do you do it with your band or you are hired into bands or both?
So usually, there's two ways that kind of club owners are doing it now. One, this way I guess is more prevalent now, like where the promoter will provide the band for you. So they have like a house band at the club that they're doing.
Yeah.
Because it just saves cost on them, right? Because
Sure.
all they have to do is fly me in, give me a room. They don't have to worry about the band. So they bring their band, and then you send your materials out about a month in advance, and they learn it. And you have, at sound check, you kind of, just iron things out. Okay, this transition, that transition, but you have to really rely on them doing their homework,
Yeah.
And then there's other, once you get a little more established and can kind of get a little more money from the promoters, then you can start talking about, hey, I'd like to bring my guys in. But festivals, a lot of times that's the way it is. They give you, here's this amount of money we're paying you, and it's for everything. Like it's for you to do the show, it's for you to bring a band to do the show. So that you have to either have kind of a network of regional musicians that you pull from, depending on where you are, or just bring your band everywhere you go. I've been playing a lot in kind of the Southeast, Gulf kind of area. So I've got 3 or 4 regional bands that I pull from depending on where I am. Eventually one day it'd be great to just, travel with the same group of guys everywhere. But right now I'm still at the, everywhere I go, it's almost a different band, and I have to, send things out and all that.
Yeah.
But
so you kind of walking that tightrope, and you're relying on the professionalism of the MD and getting the band prepared, and at least kind of knowing the format of the tunes.
Right, yeah, because, like I said, you get maybe whatever your sound check is, whether it's an hour or an hour and a half, that's what you got. You got to get ready to play, get everything feeling good, in your monitors, and go over any questions they've got or anything like that. So, yeah, you're really relying on them to put the homework in.
Yeah. But when it does feel good, and you're on stage and you're in the moment and it is just clicking and everybody is firing, everybody is communicating in that, that special musical atmosphere, it's pretty magic.
It is. And another thing that helps me that, a lot of smooth jazz guys, when they tour, we bring tracks too.
Okay.
That, they kind of feel, it's like a lot of the aux keys and percussion. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing that, it's not like where the guys are up on stage miming or anything, but
Sure.
it's just, that extra production stuff. Like, strings and all that kind of, but that always helps too, because it helps the guys feel more comfortable when they're playing, because they can kind of, it just gives them that kind of backup. Yeah. And that confidence too. So that I found that's always helped out a lot too. It's just having that kind of track going with the band.
And then having that pumped into your ears.
Yeah. And worst case scenario, the band didn't do their homework. I run a little Ableton rig, so I've got all my stems in there. So if, let's say the keyboard player is just off in left field, I just tell the sound engineer, turn him down, and I'll unmute that stem. You know what I mean? And it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then like if you don't like what's coming through your ears, you just turn everybody down, turn the track up, and it'll still sound familiar, at least if you're having a really bad night.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who are some of your influences musically?
My biggest influence is a sax player by the name of David Sanborn, an alto player. I'm sure probably almost everybody's heard of him. Just this really unique sound. Kind of put pops and rock sax kind of on the map.
Yeah.
So he was probably
He's
one
kind
of
of
my
the guy before Kenny G.
Yeah, and he kind of, I guess, took more of a more fusion type of,
Right.
where Kenny took the smooth path. Sanborn was kind of sticking with the more fusiony things. And then I was really lucky to study with a sax player by the name of Eric Marienthal, who was a Chick Corea sax player for many years. Just a really in-demand studio guy. But when I was in New Orleans in the Navy, I was able to kind of meet up with him, and we did Skype lessons for years, all while I was in the Navy. So he really helped me along a lot in those.
Did you ever run into Branford Marcellus down in the New Orleans area? or his brother or any of them?
I used to see him every year at Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
But I never ran into him outside of that.
Yeah. Is Jazz Fest on the radar?
That I haven't gotten that one on my radar yet, because that Jazz Fest is so kind of like it's so regional, I guess. You know what I mean? Like they have like this style that's like, they're doing like the Aaron Neville and the Trombone Shorty and all those
Meters
guys.
and the Dumpster Funk and
right.
Mark Broussard.
It's
and all those.
so specific to that New Orleans style that I haven't quite broken into enough yet to but I have been played on WNOZ, their big station out there. I have had 4 or 5 singles in rotation there. So that'd probably be my way in, like, eventually.
So is it a bucket list item, or? For
sure, yeah. I mean, that's a really great one. Did you end up going out there while you were out there?
I spent about 5 years in the New Orleans area on 2 different times, and I never made it out. Yeah. I've done some shows. I've done some big shows. But I kind of prefer to be either on the stage or behind the stage versus, out in the masses and masses and masses of people. But yeah, I mean, that's just me.
Yeah, I went there one year, and that was because David Sanborn was playing, and that was the only time I ever got to hear him play live. But
was he by himself, or was he part of a unit?
He was with a trio. It was him and Joey DeFrancesco doing a trio, and it was really cool.
Yeah, good stuff. Who else?
Let's see. And there's, so then the king of smooth jazz, people, Kenny G, right? Everybody knows of Kenny G. So his sound has influenced a lot of people. Yeah. So he was in there a little bit. And then there's this sax player named Dave Koz.
Oh yeah.
I used to have all his records when I was in high school and going through college, and he was a big influence on me. And I just recently kind of met him, and, he hired me on a couple of his cruises. And so we've got to play together a lot. And within I'd say the past 8 months or so, we've done several shows and 2 cruises together. So that's been kind of a dream come true, like one of your heroes that you get to, meet and play with.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he was definitely an influence on me as well.
So I can imagine, you being in the Navy, being a Navy musician, lugging all the gear, palletizing everything, doing all that craziness. And then, you get you do one of those jazz cruises, and you just kind of roll up with a bag and your sax and maybe, your ears and things like that. I mean, it's got to be a whole lot easier and perhaps, a lot more fun because it's out there with, you doing you.
Yeah. And it was a big shock, actually, and kind of took some getting used to. One of my first gigs, I did it at a bigger club, we're at sound check and we finish, and I'm like, okay, the show starts in about an hour. I'm like, so do I just like go behind this curtain right here and change? And they looked at me like I was an idiot. They were like, well, what are you talking about? Like, over here is they had an entire building reserved for us with our individual dressing rooms and refrigerators. Like, what do you mean change behind the curtain? Like, what's wrong with you?
I know. I mean, bathroom stalls behind the curtain, sometimes just wherever you are, the car, all that stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah. It is nice to go into some of those places and be like, okay, yeah, this is how the big guys do it.
Yeah.
I remember that the first time I played at the House of Blues. It was in Myrtle Beach. We got down there and we played, and they're like, okay, so here's your green room. And there, here's the headliner's green room, and catering is at this time, and I remember the food was amazing. It was even more amazing because it's just something we were never accustomed to, and the fact that a venue that does live music professionally, I mean, just it was really great to see how they took care of the artists, made you feel welcome, made you feel, like a part of the event, which you are, but. They see so many big folks that come through there, and I just thought they treated everybody kind of the same, which was all really nice, very professional, and it just made for an experience that I'll never forget.
Yeah, it's and there's still. It still varies. Like, I still do some shows where they're like, yeah, hurry up and change over here in this little room. But, more often than not, there's a nice little dedicated spot, which was always a nice change from, like I said, in the military, like it could be go in the back of this truck and change real quick, or, and eat whatever you can find whenever you can find it. But that all prepared me for. I'm prepared for anything now. So
I used to tell the Marines chow is continuous. We don't just stop and eat chow. It's like break that stuff down, put it in your cargo pocket, and just keep pressing. When you can, kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, then you start going to the amphitheaters or some of those big shows and just watch how they have things laid out. The biggest show I think I got to do was in an arena with we got to open up for Bon Jovi. We were stationed in Hawaii, and I'd won a contest, and part of that was you get to open up for them. So to go into the arena and then have all of the different rooms for dressing and catering and rehearsing and just all of that stuff was just, it just made a mental recording of all of that. It was just a great time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What's one of your favorite shows, Ben? Or what are some of your favorite shows?
I'd say so. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do 2 of those Dave Koz cruises.
Oh, nice.
And they were really amazing. The first one was a week long, and we went to we went to the Italian Riviera. So we did the Amalfi Coast and all that kind of stuff. And it was just these places that because I was stationed in Japan, so I saw all of Asia, but I hadn't seen any of Europe. So to go and on board this like luxury cruise ship where they, my experience on a ship is, just being in enlisted berthing.
It's different.
Yeah, so I went from, in a berthing compartment with 90 people stacked 3 high to this stateroom, with a balcony and just this, nicer than my house, this stateroom. But, we were there for a whole week, kind of just cruising up and down the coast and playing all these shows with all these famous artists. I was assigned to be Christopher Cross's sax player for that one. So that was really cool. So I did my own show, and then I played with Christopher Cross. Like that was my job, was to play my stuff and play with Christopher. So, that was a great one. Then the next cruise I did a few months later, we went to Iceland, Norway, and the Netherlands. And so we were all up by the Arctic Circle, and we did 2 weeks there. Same kind of situation, this great stateroom that I've, would not have ever been able to afford myself to take this vacation. And I got to bring my wife along for as long as she wanted to come. She could stay for both weeks if she wanted. And that, and then there were some really big jazz festivals that I've been fortunate enough to be able to do. The Seabreeze Jazz Festival down in Florida. Just, one of those things where it's just people as far as the eye can see that come, and you're just on the stage, and the only way people can even see you is if they look up on the Jumbotron. It's just such a cool feeling to play, a huge stage like that. But then, the next week you're at a club that holds 100 people and doing that. So it's really, it's really great. You get to kind of do all these different types of gigs.
I tell people all the time that, in the music world, you're going to have those shows where there's just, just the biggest crowds, the bigger venues, and next thing you know, you're back in the menu venues playing, in between people getting chicken wings and that kind of thing. So there's a bit of humility that kind of needs to go along with that, but that's how you build that stick-to-itiveness, and I think a lot of people get that from being in the service and just going out there and accomplishing goals and accomplishing your mission and your dreams, and the fact that you're out there doing it is just an absolute testament to you and the spirit of just keep attacking.
Like we're saying, persistence because there's tons of great players all over the world. But they're not all doing this.
Right.
And I always think, well, it's just because they just didn't stick to it long enough and didn't push, there's players way better than me that didn't make it as far. And it's probably just because they gave up before they should have, or stopped calling, stopped emailing. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. So how can people find you? How can they hear your music or see you on the socials? Which is an absolute treat, by the way. So you need to go follow Jason Jackson, and he always puts up just these great clips of all the different places he's playing and people he's playing with. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so Facebook and Instagram is Jason Jackson Music, and then my website is just jasonjacksonsax.com, and all my stuff's up there, tour dates, all those kind of things. And then everything's on Spotify, Apple Music, all those digital things as well. And I've got physical copies of CDs and all that kind of stuff on my website.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you take physical CDs on the road with you when you go and perform and get them out into the merch booths and merch tents?
Yeah, absolutely. That can be the difference between, a decent or okay gig and a great gig. As far as how much money you make, because you can double or triple whatever your fee is on your merch, depending on how many people are there and all that kind of stuff. But always do that. And again, like the merch line, the cool thing about that is you just get to meet everybody too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You get to that's where you actually make fans. Talking to people after the show. Oh, where'd you come from? How'd you hear about it? And some people be like, oh, I've been listening to you for years and all that kind of stuff. So that's really where you put that personal connection. So even if you're giving stuff away, or even if it's just to say, hey, you don't have merch, it's just like a meet and greet kind of line. I encourage people to do that no matter what.
Just you get done with your set and you pack up all your stuff and then just beat feet out to the merch booth and say hi.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah,
like I said, that's where you. Yep, for sure.
Have you had the opportunity to go back to Asia or back to Japan and some of those places?
Yeah, haven't been back yet. Hopefully soon. But yeah, haven't been back to Japan or anywhere. Like I said, that European cruise was as far as I've gotten out of the country since I got out. Yeah.
I know that a lot of times in the jazz world, people have huge followings overseas. More so than American artists in America. There seems to be a pretty big appetite for it over there.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You look on your Spotify stats and everything, and you'll see kind of what regions are playing you, and it is really strange to see, how many places overseas have that you're reaching. That you would have thought, well, how did I even get out there? But
sure,
yeah.
Have you gotten your stuff out to the Armed Forces Radio folks?
I don't think that's on the list that my radio promoter sends to. So I have to look into that and see, because that's probably a separate package you probably have to send out, I imagine. So that might be something good to look into.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, having been over there, and I don't know, might be something to look at. I know that when I was deployed and a couple different deployments, that was kind of our main way of getting entertainment and hearing things, and they're usually pretty receptive to veteran artists that are out there doing it. So
yeah, that's
pretty
a good
cool.
idea. Yeah.
So you had mentioned radio promoters, and I know nowadays there's a lot of playlist booker, and there's all these different things on how to get your music out or how to get spins and all that kind of stuff. But it's such a dangerous line because there's so many different companies out there that are just out there to take advantage of people, just take their money.
Yeah.
People that think they're going to do all these great things, and and it's just not. It's not the case.
Yeah, I found the best way to kind of increase all that stuff is organically, right? Like people that you bring to your profiles or your channels, and that's where playing live really helps. The more you're out there letting people know that you exist, the more people will visit your stuff, which helps you kind of hit the radio station algorithms on Spotify and Apple. And so it all kind of works hand in hand. It's hard to be successful at radio and not play live.
Sure.
And it's harder to be successful live without the radio support. So it's kind of two things that you have to kind of prop up against each other, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah. And then another thing with the streaming services that I found is the more you hit them with releases, the more you kind of stay relevant in their algorithm. So instead of just releasing one record, every 2 years, release some songs as singles first. Like even if it's not something you want to put out the radio or anything, just like a deep cut single, just for streaming. So every 3 months maybe release something, just so you're constantly kind of hitting them.
Right.
Yeah. And then you put them all together on your record, and then you release that record. And so then that's another hit to the streaming. So that's something we've been experimenting with. That's kind of been helping a little bit. But,
yeah. It's important to stay tuned to the algorithm, and you can't always figure out what that is. But if you go in there and you do a little deep dive on your analytics and see where or your heat maps, and you see where people are tuning in from or where they're downloading, the most from. And then, when you do some targeting ads and things like that, it all kind of, ties into that.
Yeah, the same thing is trying to get live gigs, right? Just the persistence kind of wins.
Yeah. What's your dream stage? Where have you really wanted to play but just haven't had the chance yet? I know for a lot of the singer-songwriters that we talk to, the top two have to be the Ryman and Red Rocks.
Yeah, I was say Red Rocks, and then like Hollywood Bowl is like a nice,
Yeah. I got a buddy of mine. He was out there and he went to see Trombone Shorty at the Hollywood Bowl, and he was just like, they just absolutely just crushed.
Yeah,
Like just took the wind out of everybody's sails.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, have you seen them?
Yes.
Yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah, he definitely brings the energy.
Yeah. All right, so what do people need to know about Jason Jackson?
That's a good question.
I think I'm going to add that to my list. I didn't mean to stump you there, but
no. Just as far as my music's concerned, just like a R&B driven, pop influenced, singable melodies, great grooves. Just feel good music for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Before we go, I do want to kind of to caveat on that. As a singer-songwriter, some of the things, if I hear a melody, I'll try to capture that, or growing up being a drummer, a lot of times if I get a rhythm going or get some kind of beat going, that'll spark some other ideas. But as a jazz musician, or as a pop jazz musician, without having lyrics, how do you develop those melodies and kind of the structure to the songs?
Yeah. So I think about it as lyrics. When I'm writing something, like I'm kind of singing words. They might not make any sense,
sure,
but like as I'm coming up with a melody, I'm thinking words and syllables, and mainly just because it helps you phrase like a singer. That's kind of the one cool thing about being a saxophone player or any wind instrument, is we have to phrase like a singer because we have to breathe. Whereas like a piano player or a guitar player, they can just go on with these run-on phrases, and it's harder for them sometimes to have this natural phrasing. Whereas with us, it's built in because we have to pause to breathe. Right. So like I said, I think about it as if I'm a vocalist. I think, can somebody sing this? I hear somebody singing it in my head when I'm writing it, but that's kind of helped me with all my top line stuff, is just, could I hear somebody singing it? Yeah.
So you kind of create that hook or the head and just kind of build it from there.
Yeah, definitely. Usually, we'll start with a groove and like a hook, and then we'll kind of, after we get that kind of down and, what's the vibe of the tune, then we can kind of come in and write some verses, pre-chorus, and then where do we want to go with the bridge, that kind of thing.
So again, with the VetTunes podcast, we want to shine the light on military and veteran artists. It's not so much about the military career or necessarily the music career. It's just the fact that there's a little bit of both in there, and the fact that you have gone through the Navy musical pipeline, and now you're out there doing it professionally as a touring musician. What advice do you have for others that may be wanting to follow in those shoes?
Yeah, I'd say especially for people that are thinking about getting into a military music program, that maybe want to continue on afterward with a career, use that time you've got in the military, because you're never going to have it like that again, to where you're basically getting paid to practice. You're not getting gigs.
You're not living show to show.
Right. You don't have to worry about booking anything. You're showing up and you're doing what they tell you, which I know can be frustrating to a musician sometimes. But look at that as this is like your growing phase. That's what I did. It took me 10 years. I stayed in 10 years before I felt like I was ready to get out and do my own thing. But I definitely improved quite a bit in those 10 years. And it was because I was taking lessons privately. I was listening. I was going out and playing. When everybody went home for the day, I was still in there practicing and playing, working on my sound or whatever it is. But just use that time wisely, because then you'll have options when you decide, okay, I think I want to get out. You know, you'll be where you want to be. Whereas a lot of people I've seen that get these jobs, the best they ever were was on their audition day. And then they get the job and then they never practice again, and they just, you know, kind of stay at this level here. And, you know, those are the guys that wouldn't be able to get a gig when they got out, even though they were a great player when they auditioned to get in. So, you know, if that's something you're wanting to do, just use that time as wisely as you can, and don't just say, oh, I'm good enough for this gig, so I don't need to get better. Like, continue to kind of push yourself to get better for you.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Yeah. Are you going to be around Nashville anytime soon?
Not that I know of, but stuff's coming in all the time. So, yeah.
Well, I'll keep an eye out on the socials and the website.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to come see you live. You know, live music is just it's magical. It's healing. It's just makes you feel good. And you know, you're out there just absolutely crushing it. And I'd love to have you by the studio. Come see us at Harmony Hill and check out what we got going on.
Yeah, I'd love to see everything.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Thanks again. You know, one of the things that we do with the artists that can join us in the studio is we'll conclude the interview and then we'll go into a musical performance section. Obviously, you know, with you being over in Virginia and us doing it via the internet, that's something we'll have to put on the books. Yeah. I still got some of those old videos and recordings too. I might have to break some of those out.
Oh, yeah, right. And you know, that's not the first time we played together. In Wilmington, we actually did a show together. When I was, it was back when I was working for Target. It was some festival that you had seen something I did on Reverb Nation, I think. This is how long ago it was. And I remember we went and we rehearsed at Tommy Brothers' studio. Yeah. And we went and did like a festival, and then we did Kefi that same night. So it was like we did two.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I've got footage of that too. I think that was after I had gotten back from deployment. And we went out there and we did that. Oh,
yeah, I want to say that was like 2009, 2008, something like that. It was.
I think it was 2006, and I think we were. I can't remember if we were opening for Edwin McCain that night at Kefi's.
No, I think it was just us that night, because you had a band open for you that night. Okay. If I remember right, there was a band. There was an opening act for you.
I gotcha. Nope, I have those recordings too.
Yeah, so yeah, it's been a long. We've known each other a long time.
Okay, and that's yeah. Now it's all coming together. And then I knew you were down in New Orleans. And,
yeah, that's right. And then we got up there.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's great to talk to you. It's always inspiring to talk to veteran artists that are out there just really kicking ass and doing what they love to do, and that's really the most important thing. So thanks for being with us. One more time on the socials.
It's Jason Jackson Music on Instagram and Facebook, and then jasonjacksonsax.com for my website.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, go check them out. And the beauty of VetTunes is we talk to people that are in the music community. It's not necessarily, based on any kind of genre or instrument or that kind of thing. We just want to highlight some pretty talented people that are out there. And Jason, you're absolutely one of those. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, take care.